Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves.
What's up, Minties? I am Dom Levesque. We are going to be taking a deep dive into the DC Finest Aquaman, the King of Atlantis trade paperback. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody, to Near Mint Condition. Welcome back, everybody, to Near Mint Condition. And welcome back, everybody, to Near Mint Condition. It has been a while since we've done one of these, and I promise this will be the last week of suboptimal setup before we get the lighting and everything else back into play. But here it is in the fine print. Once again, this is none other than DC Finest Aquaman, the King of Atlantis trade paperback, which releases this week on the 7th or 8th of January 2025, and wherever you get your books. This collection clocks in at 600 pages, making it one of the upper end page counts echelons of the DC line of DC Finest collections thus far. This also collects Adventure Comics 229 to 280, 282, and 284. Action Comics 272, Detective Comics 293 to 300, World's Finest 125, Showcase 30 to 33, Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane number 12, and Aquaman 1 through 3. At the front of the books are switch credits. If you actually look on the left-hand side, the opening mock-up had Jack Miller as the top billing person on the left. This time it is Robert Bernstein, the man who is credited, and rightfully so, for the current and Silver Age origin story of Aquaman, the Aquaman origin story that most people accept today as the canonical one. So this is also the cover to issue number 31 of Showcase, which is the second cover that Aquaman was featured on, with Aqualad and Aquaman. Along with them is Jack Miller, the man who wrote most of the stories that are collected in this DC Finest trade paperback. And I was actually surprised because he should have probably gotten the first billing, since he is, again, the person who wrote the most in here. Ramona Fradon also illustrates most of the stories in here, and she is appropriately credited as so. Here's a look at the spine vertically and horizontally as well from the years 1957 to 1962 is what this DC Finest trade paperback collects, with, of course, the King of Atlantis as the subline. And then here is a look at the back of the book presenting DC Finest stories with this very nice teal Aquaman hue that we are mostly known for today, at least for his gloves, regardless. All right, everybody, let's take a plunge into the depths of the seas with Aquaman, the King of Atlantis. Of course, the front cover, Showcase 31 by Dick Dillon and Sheldon Modoff. Here is a look at the front of the book. Here's a look at the table of contents. You can see that all stories are by Robert Bernstein and all art by Ramona Fradon, which, again, case in point, unless otherwise noted. They do also list if the writer is unknown or not. I had to actually look these up myself in wikis and check to see and cross-reference if they were actually unknown/unfounded stories, and to my surprise, a lot of these Aquaman stories we just don't know who illustrated them, who wrote them, and we are left blank with that. But the nice thing about this particular trade paperback is that we again do get the reference of these are those creators who worked on this particular story, worked on this particular title, unless otherwise indicated, which is a nice thing to have. So my exposure to Aquaman, everything before, I've read New 52, Aquaman, Batman the Brave and the Bold, was my first exposure to Aquaman. That was a TV show that I had grown up with, and Aquaman I thought was pretty cool there, even if a bit dumb looking. And then I had to remind myself, this is just Mermaid Man from SpongeBob, but in actual human form, I guess. Half Atlantean, half human, whatever you would like to call it. Of course, read the Brightest Day series that also predominantly featured Aquaman in multiple of those stories. That is the Jeff Johns, Peter J. Tomasi 26-issue run that ended right before New 52, that set the stage for the DC Universe right after the pages of Blackest Night. And of course, like I have aforementioned Jeff Johns' and Ivan Reyes's and Paul Pelletier's Aquaman run, along with Jeff Parker's Cullen Bunn's during DCU. Dan Abnett and, of course, Kelly Sue DeConnick thereafter were immediate follow-ups. But I hadn't actually read anything Aquaman for the longest time, with the exception of a couple of Will Pfeiffer issues from the 2002 run, because they were illustrated by Patrick Gleason. In the early 2000s, of course, before he made his way over to collaborate with Jeff Johns, Dave Gibbons, and, of course, Peter J. Tomasi on Green Lantern. So it was the first time I had read a lot of these stories. In the Silver Age, DC was responsible for publishing line-wide shifts for most of their characters. You want to talk about Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. It was a completely different era for a lot of these characters, and Aquaman also falls into that same category as well. It's no exception. Adam Waterman, as he was called in a 1947 published comic, was completely different in the Silver Age. And he had to take a major transition to the character he is pretty much known today for. From the costume, to the origin, to the story beats. And I actually feel ashamed, because I do think that Super Friends ruined a lot of the perception of what Aquaman was and who Aquaman is as a character, as a superhero, and how cool he can just be in general. I don't even know if we would have needed the Brightest Day version of Aquaman, and for all of those different creators who took him into brand new waters from 2009 onwards, for people to see that he wasn't just a punchline to tell people, hey, I talk to fish, and the same cultural nonsense that we are dealt with a lot today, which also extends to the Aquaman movies. So we have this DC Finest collection, along with the Justice League of America collection, to sort of show you that this guy is and should be given a lot more credit for who he is as a character, and that he isn't just a person who talks to fish, obviously. We started off with Adventure Comics 229, unknown writer, but a lot of his adventures are mostly delegated and relegated to comic strip style formats, but they are extended into these 5-6 pagers and a lot of these Superman backups. You want to talk about not only Ramona Fradon, who illustrates this book incredibly nice. I love her lines, the clean colors, everything else that deals with that sword in the same sense of a lot of Silver Age titles. You do also have the first appearance of Toto the Octopus in that particular issue. And a lot of these comics were edited by Mort Weisinger, who had also been editing at DC for way more than a decade at this point on Superman titles, including Superman, Action, and of course Adventure Comics. A lot of these wild, wacky stories are also one-offs. It's trying to establish how his superpowers work, the echolocation signal that allows him to communicate and also identify sea creatures. There's a time traveling story in here where he has to figure out, I need to save this person's ship because he doesn't know how to swim. And then another one later where he gets transported into the year 6958 in Atlantica, a world where there is no water. So why would Aquaman need to save anybody? Makes him useless? Well, you get to figure out what happens in that story as well. There are also a lot of nods to novels such as Robinson Crusoe and multiple other 1700s inspiration for this character and this version of Aquaman. You have people who are trying to misidentify him, like we have in the Golden Age Superman storyline. There's a lot of wacky Silver Age content in here if that is your jam. But I've always had a fascination with prehistoric sea creatures and just sea creatures in general. I remember being a kid and waking up and seeing, let me think about what Devonian period wild sea creature I can think of to draw. A Dunkleosteus, Tiktaalik, Ichthyostega, if you guys are familiar with any of those creatures. Maybe it's just my love for these or the fact that I grew up with SpongeBob that I love sea creatures, but I do. They perplex me in a very, very good way. But I think the most important thing that is in this specific book is, of course, issue 260 of Adventure Comics, which is the story that essentially establishes the modern perception of Aquaman, as well as the origin story for Aquaman. And yes, spoilers, if you have read New 52 Aquaman or watched the Aquaman movie, this will be very, very familiar to you. It is the establishment of the lighthouse keeper, a man named Tom Curry, who found Atlanta washed away on the shore, and the two immediately fall in love and give birth to the son, and that son, of course, is none other than Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. They reestablished that in the New 52, they reestablished that in the movie, and it also gets washed away. I think that's like the 6th pun I've had today for this specific book being underwater, but forgive my Adam Schwarzeneggerness. I am going to continue off running with that. He takes a look back at Atlantis. There's multiple stories in here where you get to see the foreshadowing of what Aquaman eventually would become. This really does, again, establish his set precedents for who he is in the DC universe and the characters that he eventually will end up being friends with in the long run, like Superman and etc. There's also a wild story in here, very much Archie-like, where Lois Lane is a mermaid and falls kinda in love with Aquaman, but she also has her mindset on Superman, because that is, of course, how the world works, or how this world works, and we have to get conflicted there with the weird love triangle, quadrangle of Superman, Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Aquaman, because, of course, it is the Silver Age. You also got to have the sidekick. There is multiple stories here that are also illustrated by Nick Cardy, a person who I thought would end up at the front billing of this book with Ramona Fradon and Rob Bernstein. But he isn't, for whatever reason. I find that interesting because he first appears in Adventure Comics 269, and also Nick Cardy illustrates a good chunk of this book. Again, and I actually hope that for the people who are reading a lot of these Aqualad stories, that we are going to be getting an Aqualad featured collection or a DC Finest Teen Titans for the Silver Age, to see him, Dick Grayson, and Donna Troy, and everybody else as a part of those original 5 Titans paired up for the first time in a DC Finest collection. We also have run-ins with Superman in issue 272 of Action Comics, because there is something water-related. There's usually a boat sinking, there is usually somebody who needs help, and that is how Aquaman and Aqualad find themselves in plenty of the situations. You also have the showcase issues that are featured in here. The showcase issues are the first appearance of Aquaman on covers, which is a super, super nice thing to see that they are including those in here, and the covers as well, so that people can see what they look like restored. There's also World's Finest issue in here, World's Finest Comics 125 by Jack Miller and Nick Cardy, and another great attention to detail with the character mapping and including and completing every single appearance of the character from this particular time period. And it, of course, would give Aquaman his own runway to get into his own series. Issues 1 through 3 are also featured in here as well, which would eventually lead us to the first appearance of very popular characters in Aquaman lore, such as Mera, Ocean Master, and whatnot. To take a look at the back of the book, it is now a lot more completed with the DC Finest coming in and ongoing. They do also have the ISBNs there, which I do find it nice. So if you are interested in getting any of these books, you can look them up. Of course, with Green Arrow coming in later this month. But that, as they say, is that. Now, if you're looking to purchase Aquaman DC Finest, the King of Atlantis, you can take a look at our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltzcomicshop.com, and you can use the code NEARMINTCONDITION at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
But that's going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see you all next week with better lighting. I am Domovex signing off. You be you. Take care and stay fresh, Mentees.